It's another Monday, and that means another episode of Mastering Social Media for Schools podcast with me, Andrea. I'm a little nasally right now, but it's all good because it's fighting a little sinus infection. Gotta love that. But I'm so glad you're here, you guys. Today you're going to meet Sara Fuller. Sara Fuller is the business teacher and librarian out of Superior Public Schools in Nebraska. And she's got an amazing story to tell in regards to her program using students to help celebrate the school. She's going to be talking about how she selects students to help, how she trains them, what exactly they're responsible for, many different ideas for Instagram features and stories and IGTV. And oh my gosh, you're going to get so many ideas. If you don't have a student intern program or student contributors yet, maybe this is the episode that's finally going to convince you because it's going to make your job easier. So I am excited for you to lean in and learn. Remember, the show notes has a lot of examples that Sarah's going to be talking about. I've linked them up all for you. And by the way, are you signed up for my newsletter? You better be. There's a little pop-up that comes up right when you go to my website, socialschool4edu.com. That's the number 4. So socialschool4edu.com. So many goodies waiting there for you. But if you have not signed up for my newsletter, there's a pop-up there. Sign up for the newsletter. There's also a link in the show notes. I come at you every other week with great tips and tricks and strategies that are going to help you tell your story in a positive way. So I'm excited for you to check that out. So before we get started, our K-12 PR tip is on Instagram stories and realizing that you can save stories to highlights. So I'm not sure if you know that stories only live for 24 hours. Highlights can live for as long as you want. You can actually save stories to highlights so that it's on the top of your Instagram page, and you can have those for people to look at long after the 24 hours has passed. It's very easy. If you have never saved your stories to a highlight, you can actually go into your archive and find your stories archive and assemble a highlight reel for your page. And you can separate those. You're going to see many examples on Superior's page, and they've got weekly polls, they've got a bracket challenge, they've got senior features, they've got new teachers, they've got homecoming, so many things that they share on stories, and then they don't have to lose it. They can actually highlight it for months and years, and it might be time to clean up some of your old ones. That's what I just did on my page. Some of the things from way a long time ago that maybe we don't need on there anymore, but you can keep them for as long as you want. So that's my tip today. Now let's jump into our interview with Sara Fuller. Hello, Sara. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I am excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you are here. Of course, very familiar with your school district, but why don't you share kind of your background and how you help with social media at your school?
So I'm in a small rural school, and when I say small, I mean 400 students, K-12. And my background is I am the business teacher here, and so technology has always been a passion. And I always feel like I have the students to do these real world projects, so I like pulling them in and just volunteering them to help. But my main role at our school is as the business teacher and librarian.
Okay, business teacher and librarian.
Yes.
That's an interesting combination. I don't think I've heard that combination before. And so you are in a small rural school, and where exactly at?
In Superior, Nebraska.
Okay, awesome. So I don't know if I've interviewed anybody from Nebraska on the podcast, so maybe you're the first one. Social School for EDU, we've actually been working with your school for a lot of years now, where we do the social media management for the school. You are like the key person inside that helps us as well. But can you just kind of explain when we do social media what that looks like for you and your staff?
Absolutely. So working with Social School for EDU, we just have a generic email account set up that they basically check. and we just have our staff send everything into them for the most part. It's pretty seamless. And I work alongside with our account manager is Emily. So I just kind of work alongside. She'll ask me questions if she's not sure, just clarifying, is this okay to post? And things like that. So
Yeah, and you are the main contact, so that works out well. And Emily Peterson actually is my original, the OG for account managers. So she was a friend of mine, mine and my husband's, and was brave enough to trust me when we started branching out and doing more schools. And so she's got a lot of experience. But we just love being able to celebrate the great things happening at your small school because we're able to reach a lot of people. Um, and so you have a very active social media presence, and I know that's in large part to your student contributor program. And that's what I kind of really wanted to focus on in today's episode because you've done such a great job fostering that. So, tell me a little bit about your how you involve students with the social media storytelling that you're doing.
right. And so when we first started working with social schools for EDU, I knew it was awesome. I was excited about it, but there was no way that we could tell the story fully or capture everybody's interest if it was just us as staff members. So I had a couple of students who I felt were trustworthy and would really enjoy this as well. So just kind of put them in charge of brainstorming ideas. Um, Posting mainly just to stories or doing a few lives at some sporting events. So that was kind of how we started. And I just had two students, and then I kind of just pick a few every year. Typically, they're in a class of mine, just that way we can touch base and kind of make a plan and see how are things going. And this year, I have the largest class I've ever had for kind of my digital media. So we've split into different sections just because we have lots of things going on in our school. But I kind of let the kids say who wants to be in charge of what. So I had students who were like, we want to be all about social media this year. Um, but still it's building those relationships and knowing that you can trust that they have our information to our school social media, that I know that they're going to use it in a manner that's appropriate to be doing that.
Yeah. So you guys don't have a designated communications person. Obviously, we help with the social media aspect. I'm interested in your digital media class, and that you have a big class. And a big class for you is how many students?
13.
Okay. Instead of, 4 or whatever, right? That
Right.
it's probably an
Yes.
elective class. So, in addition to the social media responsibilities, what are some other things that some of those classmates are focusing on?
They do a 3 days a week student news program that they film and we put out on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. And then this year we got a huge new video board in our gym.
Okay.
So I have a group of kids that's in charge of that. So they all have those main focus areas, but like this past week with homecoming, they really came together to work on projects together to integrate in all of those areas. So that was really awesome to see as well.
Okay. And how long have you been having students help with social media? Do you remember what year you started?
It was Marty's first year, so 4 years ago, maybe five,
Okay.
maybe
Yeah, I
five.
was thinking at least 18, but maybe it was 2017. So you've done it year over year. I'm sure you've continued to refine your process. How do you really train the students into, what's okay? What do we expect from
Mhm.
you? How do you do that?
Um, Really, we'll kind of look through past highlights that we've saved and say, this is kind of where we've been. This is the expectation. This is what our viewers are used to. But I always kind of let them put their own spin on it as well. And I mean, I think being a small school, they know obviously there's only two other students who are posting on this besides me. So if something's not appropriate, it's going to be pretty easy to determine, well, who did that? So they take it pretty seriously, and I think they enjoy getting to tell the story from the student's perspective as well.
Yeah. So what are they actually able to post on? Do you kind of just steer them towards Instagram stories? Is that right?
For the most part, this past week, like I said, with homecoming, the whole class went all out. So
Okay.
they did some short IGTVs.
Okay.
Um, but for the most part, they know stories. They don't have to ask. They can just post. They have done a few interviews with new teachers and new coaching staff, which I've just allowed them to post those as well. But usually those are long enough that they're going to IGTV
Okay.
too.
So they don't have access to Facebook. They have access to
Yes.
Instagram. Now, do your stories go on automatically onto your Facebook stories as well?
Yes, they do.
Okay, awesome. And you guys do so what kind of features are you doing on there? I know you've got a great library of seniors. So can kind
Mhm.
of explain that and then maybe a few other ideas that they do for stories.
Yep. A senior focus always, I feel, is important, just to highlight those students. So this year they have chosen to do just a really brief interview, kind of your name, what are your future plans, where do you plan to go, and just posting those throughout the year. And then other things that they're doing, just a weekly poll. I said some interaction just because of algorithms. I said, even in stories, if we never post anything people want to see or touch or do, I said, then it gets pushed back, 50 in their story. So nobody's seeing it. So they do a weekly poll of some sort. And then, like
And
I said,
can you explain like some examples that they've asked for that weekly poll just to
yes.
give?
Yep. They've done things like, what is your favorite French fry, and giving them choices like Arby's, McDonald's, things like that. Usually they're just fun questions.
Okay.
Principals month, they did a question with like, what do we call our principal? Because I guess they have a nickname for him. I didn't know about it, but obviously the kids did. So they just gave three choices. So just kind of something fun like that as well for a poll. But usually they're just kind of lighthearted and go with the season or just random questions that we might talk about in class. It's usually very random, but try and get something that people will want to interact with.
And do you get pretty good participation?
It just really varies. I think there
Yeah.
was one question that I told them to do, and they're like, "Oh, nobody will answer that." And I'm like, "It got the most interactions that we've had in a while." So,
Mrs. Fuller knows what she's talking
yeah.
about, right? That's funny. Okay, we're going to make sure to link to all of the social media channels for Superior, but specifically on Instagram, I'll link to the seniors and then the weekly poll. So they're usually adding those to the story. So all of you listening right now will be able to see exactly what they're doing. I love the senior feature because it's 50, like, stories are only 15 seconds. So I mean, yes, you can go longer, but really you're kind of encouraging them keep it short, and
Mhm.
most seniors don't want to talk a lot anyways, right, Sarah? At least
Right.
when in class maybe they want to talk a lot. On Instagram they're just like the shorter the better. So some of them know where they're going to go to school, some of them don't. Maybe they know what they're going to go to work or the armed forces or whatever, but they're kind of sharing those plans, and I'm sure that they prompt those people a little bit ahead of time, right?
Yes. Yep, they do.
And do they're trying to do about one senior every week? Is that kind of the goal?
Yeah, we have a smaller senior class, so we
Okay.
kinda looked and we said as long as we got 1 a week, we would be done prior to graduation, so
Okay. And so some of you listening with, 300 people in your senior class, maybe you can't do that. But maybe you can feature some of your seniors and, it doesn't take long. So I just love that. So many of my listeners right now are probably super nervous. And I think you were probably nervous at first too. So what can you share to help urge people to try this?
I say even if you start with one kid maybe that or a teaching friend would feel confident in. Even that first year, like I said, I had the students kind of think of some projects. We did some like in the day of the life of, and did like our first grade. So while it was my student contributors project, they coordinated everything with the first grade teacher and took her an iPad and said, "We'll come in and check in with you at these specific times to upload things." So just starting small. And then I always encourage my kids to follow other schools' social medias, or I'll share some that I think are good as well. But just starting small is better than nothing because kids truly know where it's at and have more of those inside secrets and know what's going on than even me as a staff member who teaches with students every day.
Yeah. Yeah, they just have a unique experience of your school, right? And I think on Instagram, they're communicating to a lot of other students. So I'm sure that that has helped with your following on that channel. I like that first grade, like day in the life. So that was the first grade took a bunch of pictures or short videos, but didn't necessarily put them right into stories, your crew, your students
Mhm.
ended up putting it into stories after the fact, right?
Yes.
Okay. Or
Yes.
during the day, maybe they went
During
in.
yeah, during the day, they had some check-in times, and we really that was one of our first years, so we really hyped that up and promoted it so that our first grade parents would be, like, waiting for it and going and checking, and I feel like that was actually one of our more successful things that we should probably visit again because the kids liked it, the parents liked it, it was fun.
Yeah, I love that. And especially now, I don't know, what school is like with all of our listeners, but there's limited maybe people allowed in the building. And so being able to share a day in the life, especially when you think about those, like kindergarten classroom, right? Parents that are coming in are like wondering what is a typical day in the kindergarten life. And I know that I've heard in other areas, middle school or high school, students that are nervous about going into those grades. It might be something great. And yes, stories only live for 24 hours, but you can save them in highlights, and so that can be really powerful, because I think that first grade day in the life, I'm pretty sure is still on your highlights.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, so I'll make sure to link to that one specifically, for everybody. But I love that. Starting small is great, and then yes, follow other schools' social media for great ideas,
Yeah.
and you encouraging your students to do that is really helpful. Now, um, you you don't do, like, students takeovers and, have them just help out for one day. You kinda have them help out for the whole school year. I
Mhm.
think there's an advantage to that because you can really train those folks in. Are some of them juniors, so they might end up helping you for 2 years, or is it usually always seniors, or how does that work?
It really just depends. Like I said, this year with having that larger class, I let them pick and decide. And so while that class is a mix of freshmen to seniors, it was a couple of seniors who kind of took that on.
Okay.
But hopefully, training a few younger ones as the year progresses or and winds down so that maybe they'll return and want to do that next year.
Yeah. No, I have a question for you. With any of your past, student, have any of them decided, hey, I want to go into communications or marketing or any of those things?
I know one is really big into graphic design, so
Okay.
enjoyed being able to do all of the neat, things like that.
Yep.
Um, but not that I know of. But
Okay.
I think it's good. I think it's good experience for them
Yeah.
because I kind of put them on them to communicate. Like when they're doing the interviews that they're posting too. Like it's up to you to come up with the questions and communicate with adults as if you are a professional. So just some good job training, regardless of what they do in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and just to let them know, hey, this is out there, and you can actually get paid for it. Like, I've known a lot of kids that have gotten some experience, and then all of a sudden they start doing it for local businesses or whatever. It's a real need. So that's awesome. So overall, I mean, small district. I think when Marty Kobza is your superintendent, and we worked with him with his school in Wyoming. And then when he came on board, I think before him, you had a superintendent that was really active personally on social media, and so you were active then too, and active now. How do you think social media helps with the communication and the engagement in your school district?
I think it really helps tell our story and those little things that, like, my own children in elementary school don't come home and tell me that, but we'll see it on social media or my husband will, and I think it really helps spark conversations because kids don't like to come home and communicate with us. But through social media, we're able to see, what are they doing, and just things that are happening, and I think it's just a positive light for the most part. But definitely, we use it as a big communication tool with changes for sporting events. We started doing weekly events on there so that just parents know. I mean, at a quick glance on Monday, they can see this is what's going on for the week. But for us as a smaller district, it's a huge communication piece as well, and not just always telling our wonderful story.
Yeah, and I just think, from a small school standpoint, being able to show some of the opportunities that are available, because I think sometimes people think small schools, small opportunities, but you can really elevate those stories and get them out to more people. And it's like, no, we've got a lot of great things that we have to offer our students.
Absolutely. And I know we've had a lot of new staff lately just due to retirements. And so when I do kind of a 1 day training with them and we talk about social media, I always ask, how many of you went and checked us out on social media before you even interviewed? And most of them have, because that's kind of where we are. So they kind of have a feel for the district, before they're even walking into our building.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you got to have a website that has your main information, but if your future staff need to know what it's like, they're going to go to your social media pages. And right now, I think all schools are experiencing some shortages and, subs and all of these positions. To stay competitive, you really want to be out there. Pretty seamless process for your staff to be able to share stories. And do you think m- not everybody's going to be bought in, right? Maybe not everybody's going to be submitting things. But do you feel like after all of these years that most of your staff is comfortable?
Absolutely. And I try and do just sharing or prompting, like, hey, do you want to share this? Or even I'll walk down the hallway and get some things, of what's going on in the classroom. But overall, I think they've seen the impact that it has and how excited kids get. Oh, are you going to, is that going to be on Facebook tonight? So I think, having the students buy in and they're like excited, like, yeah, take my picture. Yeah, record me, helps the staff want to try and capture some of those things as well.
Yeah. And do you know if you have very many students in your district that can't be photographed on social media?
Right now, this school year, we only have 2.
Okay.
Um, so usually it's a small number, so easy to communicate with those teachers and typically me, so that I just make sure that we don't get them in there.
Right, yeah. And that's kind of how we work with schools. Emily's not going to necessarily know all 400 students, but we always make sure staff has to realize which students can and can't be pictured
Yep.
and not send those in. Sarah, so what would be your best social media tip?
My best social media tip, probably just don't be afraid to try something. Like I know you posted about reels, and I'm like, I like watching reels, and I just was like, well, I'll try something. So that's kind of the new in thing. So try it. If it works, great. If not, well, then I guess, just move on. But just kind of keeping up with the trends too, because that's kind of how social media is. There's always something new and hot, but being willing to give that a go and putting it out there.
Yeah, it's always scary until you try it, and then you're like, "Oh, this isn't that bad." Or like you said, it doesn't work, and then I'm gonna go back to, doing what I was doing. You're also really active in our membership group, which for schools that don't have us manage, it's a different program. For you, it's all included. But can you just tell me how that online Facebook group and some of those trainings has fed into some of the ideas and things and helped you guys tell your story?
Absolutely. The trainings are one of my favorite things, especially if I know I'm looking for some things are slowing down, just getting some ideas. Oftentimes, if there's a document or something, that I can share with those student contributors and say, hey, why don't you look over this? Tell me what you like. What should we try? But just a huge help, because you guys always bring in people who are in what we're doing. Like, it's not some outside person who has no idea what school's like. So they know what it's like, and trying to get that message out there. And then just the Facebook group in general, is always so helpful. Everybody's always, ideas for this, or this is happening to me. Is it happening to anybody else? So just a huge help, especially if you are like me, and not that I'm in charge, but I'm a one woman show. But then I have a whole group of other people who are doing the same thing, that can just give me some input and advice.
Yeah, and I like that you pointed out, and it's very true. The resources that we provide inside of that membership group can be used within your district. Like you can share those. So you're actually able to use maybe some elements of those trainings or those handouts, and you could actually use those with your students to help give them some ideas and guidance, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And oftentimes your Zooms are during when I have that class. I'll be like, you guys are working quietly. I'm learning. We're going to get some new ideas. So I
Awesome.
always like that as well, because then I can shout things out as we're going along.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you could take ideas and make them better and all of that. But we are all better together. Well, thanks so much for sharing this. I think this is hopefully going to really inspire some folks to grab on, onto this idea. If you are a school communicator and have a business teacher that has maybe a digital media class or something like that, it would be great to maybe reach out to them to see if they have some students that they think would like to help, and then whether you can meet with them on a regular basis or whatever. So powerful. Or maybe you are the business teacher and you're like, hey, I can do what Sarah has done too. And it can lighten the load a little bit off of your shoulders, and kind of, like you said, tell that complete story. So I really appreciate your time today. If people want to stay connected to you, Sarah, what is the best way?
The best way is probably, I mean, you can find me on social media, but I won't tell you all that. But just my school email,
Okay.
um, sfuller@superiorwildcats.org.
Okay, I'm going to make sure to link that in the show notes, you guys. So if you want to reach out to Sarah and have some questions, please do that because she'd be happy to help. And then, like I said, I'll be linking all of their social media channels out there for you. Give it a try. Be like Sarah. Don't be afraid to try something new. You might be pleasantly surprised and have a 3, 4, 5+ year program growing strong, to help your school tell your story. So, thanks so much for joining us today, Sarah.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for listening in. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.